Nobody is talking about them, and that is exactly how they want it. While the national media has been obsessing over the Kansas City Chiefs dynasty and the Baltimore Ravens MVP quarterback and the San Francisco 49ers offensive genius and the Dallas Cowboys perpetual drama, the Cleveland Browns have been doing something in Berea, Ohio that is so quiet, so deliberate, so carefully designed to fly under the radar that most of the football world has completely missed it. They have been building. Not loudly, not with splashy headlines or blockbuster trades or marquee free agent signings that break the internet at 2 in the morning. Quietly, piece by piece, block by block, with the kind of patient, targeted, nobody-is-watching precision that turns franchise-altering rosters not into overnight sensations, but into genuine, sustained October-is-coming threats. And right in the middle of all of it, the sneakiest, most surprising, most quietly exciting piece of news to come out of the entire Cleveland Browns off-season is something Shedeur Sanders did 4 days ago that almost nobody noticed, but that tells you more about where this young man's head is and where this franchise is actually going than any press conference or depth chart announcement or front office statement ever could. Because on Sunday, March 22nd, quietly, without fanfare, without a single reporter breaking it as a scoop, Shedeur Sanders launched brand new social media accounts under the handle SS2 Legendary. And within hours, tens of thousands of people were following. And the first post on the account, the very first thing the Cleveland Browns front-runner quarterback chose to say to a brand new audience on a brand new platform was this: "Saw no results, still woke up and chased it." Dogs by nature. Saw no results, still woke up and chased it. 5 words that contain an entire mentality, an entire worldview, the complete psychological DNA of a young man who went undrafted by 4 rounds of the NFL draft, who made the Pro Bowl behind the worst offensive line in football, who wakes up every single morning inside an organizational situation that still has not officially declared him the starter, and still gets out of bed and does the work. Not because the results are guaranteed, not because the recognition has arrived, but because that is simply who he is. And the Instagram Live that followed the account launch, Shedeur Sanders appearing to work out with Brown's teammates, including wide receiver Gage Larvadain from a Pilates class, told an equally important story. He is not waiting for September. He is not treating the off-season like a vacation. He is in the gym, with his teammates, building the chemistry and the trust and the physical foundation that franchise quarterbacks build in March. The ones who arrive at training camp not as strangers to their own offense, but as the hub around which everything else has already started to organize. That is the sneaky Shedeur news, and it is sneakier and more significant than it looks, because the new handle, SS2 Legendary, is not just a social media rebrand. It comes amid growing speculation that Shedeur could take the field next season wearing a different jersey number. A new number, a new account, a new chapter. This is not a coincidence. This is a young man who is mentally stepping into the next version of himself. Not the 5th-round draft pick fighting for credibility. Not the backup who got his chance when Gabriel went down. Not the rookie managing expectations. The franchise quarterback. The one this team is being built around. The one who looked at his rookie season, all the sacks and the interceptions and the broken offensive line and the coaching chaos, and decided that all of it was data, all of it was information, all of it was the raw material of becoming something the football world has not seen yet.
S2 Legendary. Second season, legendary. That is the declaration, made quietly, without a press conference, without a single reporter breaking the story as a major development. Just a new account, a new handle, and 5 words that tell you everything about what this offseason means to Shedeur Sanders personally. Now let me take you through the full picture of what the Cleveland Browns have been building around him, because the Shedeur news is the emotional centerpiece of this story. But the roster construction happening around him is the evidence that the emotion is justified. And the Browns have been sneaky about this in a very specific way. They have not made the moves that generate headlines. They have made the moves that generate wins. And those are two different things entirely. Let's start with the number that nobody is talking about enough. Tevin Jenkins, the guard who re-signed with Cleveland, had a pass block win rate at guard of 94.4% last season, which would have ranked 17th in the entire NFL if he had enough snaps to qualify. 17th in the entire NFL, from a player who was rotating into the lineup late in the season and playing behind a line that was ranked 31st overall. That number means Jenkins, not a star, not a household name, not the kind of player whose signing generates national coverage, was actually performing at an elite level in pass protection when given the opportunity. And the Browns quietly re-signed him, kept him in the building, locked in the one piece of continuity from last year's offensive line before anyone else could offer him a competing contract. That is sneaky roster building. That is a general manager identifying value that the rest of the market has not fully priced in and moving before the market catches up. And it was the template for everything else Barry did this offseason. Move before the market. Target the specific value that fits your specific system. Pay what the player is worth, not what a bidding war would force you to pay. And build the roster piece by piece from the foundation up. Zach Jackson of The Athletic, the most credible voice covering this team, wrote directly what the offensive line additions mean for the quarterback situation. The Browns added 3 offensive linemen and brought back another, but needs remain across the offense. The most pressing need is either at wide receiver or quarterback, but for now we'll assume that the Browns plan to let Shedeur Sanders try to lock up the quarterback job. Lock up the quarterback job. From the reporter who knows this organization better than almost anyone outside of it. Not compete for the job, not fight for the opportunity. Lock it up. That is the language of a journalist who has been inside this building enough to understand the organizational direction and who is now reflecting it back to his readers in the clearest terms available. The Browns built the offensive line for a quarterback, and the quarterback they built it for is being given the opportunity to make that investment permanent by locking up the job that is already functionally his. But here's the thing about the sneaky offseason that most of the coverage has missed completely. The offensive line additions, as important and as well executed as they have been, are only the most visible part of what Cleveland has assembled. The less visible parts are just as interesting, just as strategically smart, and just as potentially impactful when September arrives. The Browns signed linebacker Quincy Williams to a 2-year deal, a former first-team All-Pro, a player who racked up over 130 tackles last year with the New York Jets, reuniting with defensive coordinator Rutenberg, who coached him in New York, meaning the communication, the terminology, the defensive concepts that made Williams elite are already shared between the player and the coordinator who is going to be deploying him in Cleveland. 2 years, former All-Pro, reuniting with his coordinator. That is not a filler signing. That is a deliberate, targeted, value-maximizing addition to a defense that is already led by the best pass rusher in football in Myles Garrett. Williams lines up next to Carson Schlesinger, the Browns' 2025 Defensive Rookie of the Year, creating a linebacker tandem that could be one of the most physically imposing in the entire AFC North. Williams and Schlesinger, one veteran former All-Pro, one Defensive Rookie of the Year, flanking a defensive line anchored by Myles Garrett and now deepened by the addition of A.J. Epinesa, and all of it, the entire defensive construction, being assembled not in headlines, but in quiet signings that the national media barely covered, because the national media was focused on the quarterback chaos and the Watson drama and the open competition language and all the noise, while the actual roster was being built. Tight end Jack Stoll signed a 1-year deal, a veteran whose 81% of snaps have come from an inline alignment, a classic blocking tight end who opens running lanes and who fits perfectly in the Monken run-first system that was built in Baltimore around physical dominance at the line of scrimmage. Stoll 1 year, blocking tight end. Nobody talked about that signing. Nobody wrote a column about it. Nobody put it on a top 10 off-season moves list. But in Tide Monken's offense, the one that led the league in rushing in Baltimore, the one that uses the tight end as a key blocker in the power run game that creates every explosive passing moment, Stoll is not irrelevant. He is a functional piece, a specific answer to a specific schematic need, the kind of signing that makes a system work at full efficiency, even though it generates zero national conversation.
Defensive tackle Kalia Davis, re-signed, 1 year. A rotational interior defender who provides depth behind a defensive line that needs fresh legs in the fourth quarter when games are decided. Heavy sports, again, not a headline, not a splashy move, a functional addition, a piece of the puzzle that nobody is going to write about until week 9, when Davis gets a sack in a 3rd and 6 situation that keeps a drive alive for the defense, and everybody says, wait, where did this guy come from? That is the sneaky off-season, 20 moves total. The Browns had the second most free agent signings in the entire NFL this offseason, behind only the New England Patriots, second most in the entire league, from an organization that was $19.5 million over the projected salary cap when the offseason started, from a franchise that restructured Watson's contract just to create breathing room, second most signings in the NFL. Because Barry did not go after the most expensive players, he went after the right ones, the ones whose specific skills fit the specific system being installed, the ones whose value the market had not fully recognized, the ones who, added together, layered together, deployed together in a coherent offensive and defensive scheme for the first time in years, create something greater than the sum of their parts. And now, with free agency essentially complete, with the roster taking shape, with 28 days until Pittsburgh, the sneaky off-season story is starting to get noticed. Browns analyst Tony Grossi dropped the most important analytical verdict of the entire off-season this week. He said even if Watson wins the starting job, even if the open competition somehow goes in a direction that no organizational action has suggested it will go, Sanders will get enough games this year, combined with his 7 starts last season, to give the Browns a genuine evaluation. I think even if Watson wins the job, Grossi said, I think Sanders will get enough games, added to last year's 7 starts, minimum of 7 this year, they'll be able to make an evaluation. Minimum of 7 games this year, combined with 7 last year, 14 NFL starts total. That is what Grossi is saying the Cleveland Browns are planning to give Shedeur Sanders before they make a permanent, definitive, no-going-back decision about the quarterback position. And in 14 NFL starts, with a rebuilt offensive line, in Monken's system, with a legitimate receiver coming in the draft, the evaluation will be real, not the survival exercise it was last season. A genuine evaluation of what this quarterback actually is when everything around him is actually working. But Grossi's warning came with a standard, a specific, named, explicit standard. He said Sanders needs to take a Drake May-esque leap to secure his future in Cleveland. Drake May, the New England Patriots' young quarterback who took the biggest year 1 to year 2 leap of any quarterback in recent memory, going from uncertain to undeniable, from developmental project to franchise cornerstone in a single off-season of focused preparation and growth. That is the jump Grossi is saying Cleveland needs from Sanders. Not incremental improvement, not slightly better numbers, a leap. A genuine, visible, unmistakable step forward that makes the evaluation easy, that makes the answer obvious, that makes the question of who the Cleveland Browns franchise quarterback is feel settled rather than perpetually open. And here's what makes the Drake May comparison particularly interesting. Because May's leap did not happen in a vacuum. It happened because the New England Patriots, like the Cleveland Browns right now, made the organizational commitment to build around their young quarterback before he had fully proven himself. They gave him protection, they gave him weapons, they gave him a system designed for his development, and they told him, publicly, officially, without hedging, that this is your job, go prove you deserve it. And he did. Cleveland radio host Earl Malden said what every honest analyst and every informed Browns fan already understands. There is no outside factor that's coming to save the Browns this season at the QB position. What you better hope for is that our new head coach gets the most out of Shedeur Sanders. This is the reality of the situation. The reality of the situation: no cavalry coming, no veteran salvation arriving from outside, no trade that changes everything. The reality is Shedeur Sanders, and the Browns, through every action, every contract, every free agent decision, every organizational signal of the last 6 weeks, have accepted that reality and started building for it. Not loudly, sneakily, the way the best organizations build, under the radar, away from the headlines, with 20 signings nobody talked about and $100 million that bought protection rather than publicity. Now, let me tell you about the one piece of the sneaky off-season that has the entire Browns fan base most excited and most nervous. The piece that could determine whether everything else the organization has built is genuinely competitive or just a more comfortable version of the same 5-12 result. The receiver. ESPN's Daniel Oyefusi said it directly. The most pressing need is either at wide receiver or quarterback, but for now we'll assume that the Browns plan to let Shedeur Sanders try to lock up the quarterback job. Receiver or quarterback, those are the two needs, and the fact that quarterback is listed as an option rather than a certainty tells you something important about how the draft is going to go. Barry is going to address the receiver room in the first round with the kind of premium investment that the league-worst receiving core from 2025 demands. And that receiver, whoever it is, whether it's Carnell Tate or Mekhi Lemon or Jordan Tyson or whoever the board delivers at 6 or 24, is going to change the entire arithmetic of what Shedeur Sanders can do in September.
Tyvis Powell summed up the organizational philosophy with the most direct, most honest, most complete sentence available about where the Cleveland Browns actually are right now. They're operating as if they want to give Shedeur the opportunity to find out if he's the franchise guy. Operating as if. Not declaring, not officially confirming. Operating as if. And in professional football, where organizational actions speak louder than organizational words, operating as if is everything. Operating as if means the offensive line was built for Shedeur. Operating as if means free agency passed without a veteran quarterback arriving. Operating as if means 20 signings in one offseason, all of them targeted, all of them designed to create the environment where a young quarterback's development can actually happen, rather than being constantly derailed by structural problems that have nothing to do with talent. The sneaky offseason is real. The roster is genuinely better, deeper, more coherent, more purposefully constructed around a clear schematic identity than it has been in years. And right at the center of it, posting motivational content from new social media accounts under the handle S2 Legendary, working out in Pilates classes with his wide receivers in March, preparing for the most important season of his professional life with the quiet, relentless, saw no results, still woke up and chased it mentality that has defined every stage of his career, is Shedeur Sanders. The Cleveland Browns are not screaming about what they are building. They are not booking television time to announce their intentions. They are not generating the kind of national buzz that gets a franchise on the cover of every sports magazine in the country heading into a new season. They are just building, block by block, contract by contract, piece by piece.
And by the time the rest of the NFL notices, by the time the analysts who spent all offseason talking about QB chaos and open competitions and unjustifiable picks finally look up and see what has been assembled in Berea, the sneaky offseason will be over. The draft will be done, training camp will have started, and the answer to the question that has haunted this franchise for 27 years will be standing under center in orange and brown, behind a rebuilt wall, in a new system, with a new number on his jersey and a new social media handle that says everything his organization has not yet officially said. S2 Legendary. Second season, legendary. Nobody is talking about the Cleveland Browns right now, and that is exactly how a sneaky offseason is supposed to work.